You ready to go, Mirna?
Ready to go.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Financing Your Education presentation. Today, we're just going to start off by saying that NAU is very, very, very poignant, I guess, and pointed at trying to be as transparent as possible, especially when it comes to finances. So today, we're going to really just kind of tackle the elephant in the room right out the gate here. And we're going to be working together to really talk as your allies and your companions in this, how we look at funding the next 4 years here at NAU with you and your student, hopefully. Before we get going, you should probably know who we are. So I'll start off by saying my name is Fred Dial. I am the Assistant Director for Enrollment and Student Services. I've been with NAU in some capacity or another for about 13 years now. I was a first-gen student and I graduated from NAU twice. And with me today is...
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome, future lumberjacks and family. My name is Myrna Lord. I am the Director of Client Services in the Office of Scholarships and Financial Aid. I've been with the Financial Aid Office for almost 25 years. I am a proud NAU alum, a first-generation college student. I'm a native Arizonan. I was born in Tucson, Arizona, and I'm very happy to be here with you this afternoon. So let's get started. We have about a 30-minute presentation. To give you a brief overview, we're going to talk about cost of attendance or the budget for attending NAU. We're going to also talk about the free application for federal student aid or FAFSA. And we will talk about the benefits for completing the FAFSA and why that's so important. We will go over some other funding resources that you have as an admitted NAU student, and we will also dive into a discussion about student jobs on campus. We will have about 15 minutes at the end of our presentation to answer some of your questions, but throughout our presentation, you can utilize the Q and answer the Q&A function at the bottom of the presentation, and you can ask your questions, and Fred will try to answer what he can during the presentation, but definitely will reserve some time at the end. All right, so big picture, before we dive into more specifics, the cost of attendance budget, every student is assigned a cost of attendance budget based on their career and residency. Most students here joining us this afternoon are considered undergraduate students. So that is their career. Every budget consists of two components: direct cost or essential expenses you can always expect to have and should plan and budget for, and indirect cost, expenses that are part of the overall budget but that are individual to the person. Direct cost, as you see here, examples: tuition and fees, your housing, meal plan, and books. These are charges you can expect to see on a student's account. Although book charges do not typically appear as a charge on your student account, they are paid separately. However, books are an important expense and to consider and plan for. Indirect costs, as discussed, are individual to the person. Students tend not to see an actual transportation charge amount as what is budgeted in the overall budget. And then personal and miscellaneous would be things that you can cover with a part-time job on campus. So you won't technically see personal charges on your student account. On this slide, we have tuition and essential cost figures for this current academic year, and it's based on full-time enrollment, and the typical additional fees that you see are housing and meal plans are for a first-year housing and meal plan charges. There are other housing option and meal plans available, and check out both the housing and dining services website for other options that you may have. The first set of financial aid offer letters are in the mail right now, and students and families are receiving them. The budgets and awards may vary in the letter that you have received from what you see here on the screen, since really budgets and tuition and fees amounts will be finalized in the late spring. But here you see the tuition charge for an Arizona resident a Western undergraduate exchange student, and also a true non-resident student.
So a lot of times during this presentation, you're going to hear me and Mirna say again and again and again that at a bare minimum, you really want to complete the FAFSA. And so to kind of drive that point home, we're going to talk about a few of the myths and a few of the benefits of completing said FAFSA. So the first myth right out the gate is that you need to be a straight A student or have really great grades to submit the FAFSA. Another great myth is that there's, just not a lot of financial aid available. And kind of in that same vein, there is also a myth out there that your family just makes too much money to qualify for financial aid. Mirna, I know you had another fun fact or
Yes,
fun myth you had.
one of my favorites is that it costs money to complete the FAFSA application, which is just not true. The benefits truly outweigh the myths. Some private donor scholarship applications require at the minimum that students have completed the FAFSA and have it on file with the institution of choice. You students may be eligible for some need-based federal and state grants, but we cannot determine that unless we have the FAFSA on file. And students will always have the eligibility at the minimum for a federally funded low interest rate student loan. And again, the FAFSA is free. To complete it, the only cost involved is the cost of time, the time of your time. Right now, depending on the time of year, it can normally take about 30 to 45 minutes to complete the FAFSA application, especially if you utilize the data retrieval tool that the FAFSA has recently or within the last few years implemented. It really speeds up the process. So yes, most definitely at the minimum, complete the FAFSA application.
So when we're talking about the FAFSA, a really important factor in this is the timelines you're going to be working with. So as we're talking about realities here, time is one of the biggest ones. The FAFSA is going to open every year on October 1st, and we always recommend that people complete it as soon as they feel accurate and as soon as possible. Now you'll see what's called a priority date. We won't really talk deadlines very much. If you are an incoming freshman, you want to complete the FAFSA on November 15th, the year before you come. And since that's passed, you want to complete it as soon as possible, which is really what you want for anything to do with Aid is as soon as you can do it, get it done. If you're a continuing student, so those of you who will be sophomores next year, those of you who might be transfer students today, February 1st is your priority deadline. So for academic year 22-23, which is next fall, we're going to be using tax year 2020, which you can do through the FAFSA website. It'll guide you with that. With that, the school code for NAU is up here on the page. You can take a picture of that if you want. We'll have a lot of slides you definitely want to take pictures of during this presentation, and the website fafsa.gov as well. The sooner you submit the FAFSA, really the bigger advantage you have to possibly be considered for other grants, other things that may be helpful for funding your education. And if you need help completing the FAFSA, I don't want to speak for Mirna's department, but I can say that in my time working with them, they're all very helpful, and financial aid advisors are a really great tool and resource for that. So please feel free to call in, email in, try to get an appointment to sit down with one of them to help them out.
Our contact information will be given at the end of the presentation, so that's coming. So the FAFSA has been filed. Okay, so now what? We talked about the cost of attendance budget at the beginning, the first couple of first slides at the beginning of our presentation. So what type of aid can the student receive? Once we've received the FAFSA application, so this is the expected family contribution calculation, that's the FAFSA output, the information that we're receiving by the family submitting the FAFSA. We subtract the expected family contribution from the cost of attendance, and any balance there is what is considered financial need, and that's how financial need-based aid is awarded. So excuse me, so this is the formula that is utilized when offering and determining the financial aid awards that you will receive or will be offered to you. And we will refer to this formula when discussing the types of awards. Again, the types of need-based award that you may receive. We totally understand that the cost of attendance budgets numbers can be large, and it is a huge family investment when considering, finances for college education. However, we at NAU do our best to cover as much of your financial need as possible.
So as we continue forward, we're going to start talking about three specific types of, we'll call them funding resources. The first is definitely going to be federally funded loans, and we'll go into detail about that. The next will be scholarships and grants. So we could be talking about your high school merit scores. We could be talking about some private scholarships. Grants are also, well, we'll just call it free money. That's it, is what it is. We'll talk about that a little bit too. And then student employment, something we'll cover as well, federal work study and student wage. Now, when we're talking about federal student loans, there are really kind of three big ones we want to cover. The first is the subsidized loan. What's special about the subsidized loan is it does not accrue interest while a student is in school. Like many of the loans you'll see today, I guess really one other one, a student can accept this on their LOUIE portal, and they will need to complete an entrance counseling and master promissory note in order to have this be an option. Similar to the subsidized loan, but with a key difference, is the unsubsidized loan. They sound similar. So if you have to ask what the difference is many times, don't worry, we're ready for that. The unsubsidized loan accrues interest right after it's been dispersed to a student. So even if they're still in school, it's going to start accruing interest. Neither of these loans, though, will require payment until a student stops attending school. The unsubsidized loan, like its sister loan, will still require acceptance through the LOUIE portal and completion of the entrance counseling and master promissory note in order to proceed forward. Now, the Parent Plus loan is a really different one here. The Parent Plus loan is a loan for the student's education that is taken out by a parent. So parents, if you wanted this loan or your student and you decide that this is a good option for you, you need to submit a separate application from the FAFSA at studentaid.gov. The Parent Plus loan accrues interest right away after the first disbursement. And that's it. I don't know why I made a third option there. If you have any questions about what the interest rates look like for these loans, you can check current interest rates as they're set each year at studentaid.gov/interest rates. Now, when we're talking about loans, there are certain limits when it comes to how much someone can get per year. As you can see on the slide, the year or class ranking, as we call it sometimes, of the student will determine how much they can take out for the actual aid year, 5,500, 6,500, 7,500, so on. However, this is for the entire year. So it's important to keep in mind that if you have, let's say, $5,500 in loans for the year, that's really split half and half. So you'll see $2,750 for fall and $2,750 for spring. With that being said, there are a couple numbers that we really like to talk about when it comes to loans, especially in relation to NAU. So the first being is that 40% of our students graduate without any debt. And if you really think about what that means, that's a pretty monumentous number. It's a great thing to know. We're also really proud about the fact that those of us, or those of, well, I guess me technically too, those students who do graduate from NAU who've had to borrow aid have roughly 30% lower debt compared to the national average. Miranda, do you have anything you want to add to this?
We totally understand that loans can be scary, and it's financing, the family's basically financing investment in you, right, the student. Our advisors, our financial aid advisors, again, a great resource, a great connection and network to build on. We are here to talk you through the process and any questions you might have about loans and how they may work. So we've discussed the benefits of completing the FAFSA. We've talked about loans. We've talked about what students can be considered when completing the FAFSA, the types of federal and state need-based grants. So let's talk about other funding resources that you would have as an NAU student right now. As an admitted student for the upcoming academic year, the 22-23 academic year, you have the opportunity right now to complete a couple of specific NAU-specific scholarship applications. The Office of Scholarship and Financial Aid application, online application, will open up typically the middle of January and closes the first week of March. We will send, our office sends out a massive email again to your NAU email. Again, very important to start checking your NAU email from the point that you accept your admissions, because we will let you know when the application opens. And again, it's an online application, really simple. The NAU Foundation application, that is actually opened right now. It opened up in mid-November. It tends to close around early spring, but again, it's open now. Complete the application online, NAU, for NAU admitted students. So we have right here a listing of private donor private donor. And now these are lists of generous. We have a list of generous community donors and employers with different deadline dates and separate application processes. But again, opportunities here to apply for scholarships right now. They're open. Many of them are open. It's a list that you can filter through for scholarship opportunities that interest you. Different topics, categories, careers, whether or not you want to submit an essay. Some of us are really good at essays, some of us are not. So those are ways that you can filter through your interest. We have a listing, a lot of the um, people on the donors on the list itself, we have been vetted through our office to make sure they're viable scholarships. And in many cases, we have already received a scholarship from a donor that's on the list. And for those that we have not, again, we have vetted them to make sure that they're viable scholarship applications, and no cost would be assessed to the student by completing any of those applications. The website right here is a good resource, our scholarship website, and provides links to the particular scholarship opportunities that we have available right now.
So chugging on forward, another resource we want to talk about is federal work study and student employment. So we do like to kind of call this out. We recommend once you have your class schedule settled, you have a good feel of college life, that maybe that's when you start exploring a part-time job. When we say part-time, we mean part-time. This is not 30, 39 hours a week. We're looking at 10 to 15 hours a week here to kind of help cover those indirect personal expenses, maybe have some spending money. And a lot of these jobs on campus are federal work study eligible, which is a great resource for students and a great hiring tool. If you are interested in federal work study or a student job in general, definitely check out NAU Handshake. What NAU Handshake is, and the link's on the webpage, here's another opportunity to take a quick picture, is a website portal that houses a lot of applications and job openings on campus. It's definitely something we recommend. And, we actually hire a lot through that. I know my department's hired a lot of people. Mirna, I know your department takes on quite a few student workers too.
Absolutely. That's the thing, right? In our department, we have on the average 25 to 30 student workers that work in all parts of our department, from the front counter greeting and the front facing to processing, working with our scholarship team, and and also working with our operations and our document imaging team. And we're not the only ones. It's across the university. There's different opportunities, definitely depending on the student's interests. Also, the rec center, for example, hires hundreds of student workers. One of those was my nephew, who just recently graduated in the fall, in December, last week actually, he graduated. He worked for the rec center for 3 years. And he worked up to be the supervisor of the referees for the intramural sports games that are played. So opportunities are there. It is definitely, we try, the supervisors, majority of the time are full-time staff members who try to teach transferable skills, right? Something that you can take to your next job, to your next opportunity. Once you even graduate, the opportunity for networking is amazing. So definitely, we love our student workers, and I know Fred, you mentor student workers, and we all ultimately, many times we end up with student workers actually applying for full-time positions when they become available at NAU. So definitely check out. Don't check out the Handshake website. And if you have any questions, again, contact both Fred's team and my team, and we can definitely talk through how that process would work for your student. So We do another resource here is the budget worksheet, always plugging. We have a wonderful nifty tutorial on how to complete the budget worksheet on our website. And it's listed here, the website where you can connect to that particular tutorial. We want you to utilize this tool to assist you and your family to determine possible charges due after scholarships and financial aid have paid. And again, we'll talk about how disbursement and payment works in our presentation. Keep in mind that the worksheets that are being used right now are for the current academic year, and we do use actual annual cost and figures. So, and remember, awards are awarded between the two semesters. So awarded for the year, but between the two semesters. Another resource that I want to mention here, there's a wonderful course that it's offered through the Franke College of Business. It's a personal finance course. It's called FIN 190. This is a wonderful course that's offered through Professor Kevin Aguas and team, and it's a rigorous course, but he builds in a retirement plan. He also discusses student debt and possible loan payments depending on balances. So the students really get a good overview, a good, robust personal finance at the college level. And it is a liberal studies course. Some business majors are required to take it, but it is open to all majors and careers on campus. So check it out. All right, so you've completed the FAFSA, applied for tons of scholarships, kind of set up a job, right, when you start, and the stars have aligned and you've received a lot of awards, right? So how will your charges get paid? So if we take a closer look at what I affectionately like to call the Mickey Mouse diagram here on the center of this slide, the types of awards that are considered for scholarships, of course, this would be any private donor scholarships that you may have applied for and received awards. These would be the high school merit scholarships that you were offered at the point of admissions, the lumberjack, the president's, deans, etc., blue and gold. And then the grants would be the federal and state need-based grants based on the FAFSA application that was evaluated. And then never we can't forget the student loans. Remember that at the minimum, students will be offered a federally funded student loans, and parents would also offer it an amount that they can apply for through the student loans website presented earlier. So once aid disperses, which will occur about 10 days before the start of each term or semester, it will disperse, pay your charges, and Fred, how would
So
that work?
I picked a great time to take a drink. So moving forward, as Miranda said, once, I'm just going to say it again because we said we'd say it, do the FAFSA at the minimum. Your aid and any other kind of aid that's sitting there is really going to move towards your charges in a specific order. And we're going to talk about the big three, as I call it. Three. So I see the camera there. The first is tuition and fees. So any aid you have is going to start by applying to that. Tuition is important because in order to be a student, you need to pay it in order to be here. If anything is not, or if anything, how do I say this? If tuition and fees is fully paid and there's still aid left over, it's going to move to housing next. And the same thing will happen is if housing has all its charges paid, it's going to move on to meal plan next. And if there's any aid left over there, it'll go to other charges or possibly refund to a student. But the reason we start in that order is tuition, housing, and meal plan are kind of the three things we want to target first. Make sure you're a student, make sure you got somewhere to live, especially in Flagstaff, and make sure you have something to eat. At some point, Miranda will mention as well, and I'm sure this will come up many times, or no, Miranda did already, is that aid will disperse about 10 days before classes start. So before that question's even asked, that's happening there. Now, the question I get all the time whenever we talk about payments, and I wouldn't be shocked if someone asks this while I'm talking, are there payment plan options? Is there a way to break this up so it's not all at once? And the short answer is yes. And as I go into it, it'll be more good things to hear about. So the first thing is we have a tuition and fees payment plan. The reason it's a tuition and fees payment plan is because housing and meals are automatically broken up into monthly charges. Tuition and fees payment plan has a couple nice benefits. One is you know what you're paying each month. It'll break up that remaining charge into monthly payments. Two, there is a fee to enroll into the tuition payment plan, but to be clear, it is an enrollment fee. So once you enroll, you pay that fee once per term, and that is it. There's not a monthly reoccurring charge to be in the payment plan. We don't charge you interest. We just charge you to enroll you, and then we're good to go. As I mentioned, housing and meals are already in monthly payments. So by enrolling the tuition and fees payment plan, you actually get to line up what those payments are in terms of dates. So you're not guessing, is this due this week? Is it due next week? I need to manage this. Where can I move this so it's on the right paycheck? You really know what you're coming with, which gives you a lot more control of your finances. And my favorite thing, and we'll transition from talking about the FAFSA into mentioning LOUIE repeatedly, is that you can do all of this through your LOUIE account, students. So if you need to do it the last second or you need to do it in the middle of the night, it's an option there for you. Now, let's talk about what the tuition and fees payment plan would actually look like. These numbers are rough numbers. They're not anything specific, but it'll kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So the first thing I want to point out is that once again, it is a one-time per term $75 self-enrollment fee. We don't charge you to keep you in it per month. We don't charge you interest on it. And once you enroll in the payment plan, you're in the payment plan. Let's say, and I'll come back to the other 150 in a second. Let's say Jimmy, I always pick Jimmy, has all his aid apply and he still has $1,500 left in his tuition and fees. If Jimmy were to enroll in the payment plan, it would break up that $1,500 into $500, $500, and $500 for 3 months. If we're talking fall, August, September, October. We're talking spring, January, February, March. Now, there are a couple ways you can get in the payment plan. The first, as I mentioned, is you can self-enroll, which is it's the way to go. It's the best way because it's $75. However, if you still owe tuition and fees about a week to 2 weeks, certain amount of time after classes have started, you will be automatically enrolled into the payment plan and we will have to charge you $150. So quick math there, enrolling yourself is literally half the cost of being enrolled by the university. Now, we do communicate pretty well, and I'll plug for Mirna's department. Financial aid communicates really well. We will warn someone if they still have tuition and fees and are at risk of being automatically enrolled. The reason we do the payment plan as an automatic enroll is because the other option is affecting a student's enrollment, and we try to avoid that as much as possible.
Alrighty, so third time again, we met. Aid will disperse on or about 10 days prior to the beginning of each semester. Although we don't have specific dates, this current timeline, monthly timeline presented here is what you can expect every year. And this would be for the fall. And subsequently, it's very similar for the spring semester. However, the website here for the registrar on importance date is where you would need to go to get the actual dates. But, the timeline is the same every year in those 2 months. And again, like Fred mentioned, we send reminder emails, student council send reminder emails, financial aid will send reminder emails. So always be checking your NAU email account. As we mentioned, completing the FAFSA, the benefits of why that's important and a good thing to do. And we've mentioned continuously how checking LOUIE and everything that you can do through LOUIE and why that's important. As Fred likes to affectionately call it, the gateway or lifeline to your NAU experience, I call it the end-all be-all knowledge of your student academic and financial info. So get accustomed again to checking your LOUIE, checking regularly, same as with your emails. So taking a brief look, this is what it looks like for a student view of their LOUIE. So there's all these panels here. I want to concentrate, the academic side here, your academic progression, your registrar. Panels are here on top. And then let's take a look at the task. That's the big one, right? The to-do list, what the student needs to do and any holds. And the holds is a big one because holds can prevent students from enrolling in courses. It can prevent financial aid from dispersing. And in some cases, can prevent even financial aid awarding until items are taken off of the to-do list and holds are removed. When we talked about financial aid and accepting your loans, this is where you would check this tile here under financial aid is where you can view your awards. You can accept your awards through this tile. And then the financial account is the overview of your entire financial, what is owed. This is where the payment plan is separated, where you can see what's due for housing, what's due for the meal plan, and what's due for tuition under the tuition payment plan. So again, it's a quick snapshot, but basically this is what the tiles look like and where you need to go to take care of certain things, important things.
All right, some of you may be paying out of pocket for some of your charges with NAU. I do want to walk you through that process in case you want to utilize it. So let's say you're making a payment to NAU. You guessed it, you can do it through your LOUIE account. And you guessed it, you can probably do it by clicking make a payment. If you click make a payment, you'll be directed to this page. It may change in looks as we go on. We're always kind of updating things to be a little smoother. But right now, you would be directed to either our payment system or our international payment system. And there are a couple ways you can make payments. The first being online, as I was discussing, through either e-check or credit card. Now, it's really important to note that an e-check is usually the smoother way to do this because there is no service charge. If you use a credit card, there will be a 2.85% service charge. Let me say that again one more time. An e-check, no service charge. Credit card, service charge. You can also pay by mail. You can send in a check. Please don't send us cash. If you do send in a check, please include your NAU ID number, simply because if, let's say your name is John Smith, there are quite a few John Smiths, and we would really not want your money going to the wrong account. In fact, student accounts will hold that check until we know exactly which John Smith that's going to. The last option, of course, is in person. You have check, you still want that NAU ID number. You can do a money order, you can do a cashier's check, or you can do cash. Now, when it comes to direct deposits and refunds, some of you may be eligible for a refund from your financial aid. Or you may get employed with the university and want a paycheck from that. It's usually how that works. If you do direct deposit, it has a lot of advantages. I strongly recommend it. Usually about 2 to 3 business days processing. It's easy, it's fast, it's secure. It's also easy to change if anything goes wrong. If you do a paper check, it's definitely going to take you almost actually a little more than 3 times direct deposit would. And there's a higher rate of error there. I know for a fact and personally that one time I had a paper check come to me and I didn't update my address, and I spent several days chasing around a very large check through Arizona. Kind of short, long story short there, direct deposit's always a good option, always recommend it. It's definitely safer, it's definitely secure, and it'll keep you a little less stressed. Now, some of you, several of you, I'm gonna guess, probably have your parents either listening to this for you, listening with you, or are gonna have them involved in your time at NAU. There are a couple options for you as a student, and I'm talking to students specifically here because this is your education, that may be something you want to consider. You can have someone else be known as what's an authorized user, meaning you go to your LOUIE account, follow the instructions on the SEDAS website, and an authorized user can see your balance, can make payments on your account, receive any electronic bills, and receive email and text alerts when new bills arrive. So if you have someone who's going to be helping you pay this, that's a really good option for you. The other option, which I think is a little more common, but really, really important, is the FERPA. Now, the FERPA stands for the Educational Rights and Privacy Act. What that states is once you are a student and classes have begun at this university, we cannot, the university as a whole, cannot really talk to anyone about your account unless you give us permission. So on the first day of classes, if you call in to one of our phone lines, or sorry, your parent calls into one of our phone lines, and there's not a FERPA release on file for that parent, we can't talk about your account. And that doesn't seem like a big deal now, but if you have 6 classes in a day and you really need mom or dad to call in and figure out something on your aid for you, that FERPA is really going to come in handy. Both of these forms are found really easily online, one through LOUIE, authorized user, and NAU.edu/FERPA. You can go there, read more about FERPA, log it and complete it probably in 10 minutes. But both are options for students that, how do I put this? Open doors for those who want to assist them with their education. I will say this again, it's completely optional. Students, it's your education, but these are things to consider moving forward.
Okay, so we're at our end of our presentation. We want to thank you for attending and starting your financial education journey with us. Remember, if you need assistance completing the FAFSA or you have questions about any of the financial aid offer letters that you're receiving in the mail now, or any questions regarding your financial account and what charges have appeared. And as your guide and allies, we're here for you in this discussion. And here's our contact information. The financial aid number here is where you would call to set up appointments with one of our financial aid or scholarship advisors. And then the Student Service Center, of course, can answer any questions in regards to student accounts. We have had some questions pop up during our presentation. And at this point, we're going to go to those questions, right? Fred?
Yep. So we're going to start with you, Mirna.
Oh, wonderful.
I like
okay.
to. So Charlize Rojas asks us, after
Okay.
getting the financial aid award options, is it possible to get more grants if loans are not something we want to do?
The only other type of grants are tied to specific programs on campus. There's the Arizona Teach Academy and the Teach grant that are tied to students who are specifically in education programs, certain education programs. But if you weren't awarded grants, need-based grants based on the FAFSA, those are the only other types of grants that you would be eligible for. And we can most definitely, if you have questions about your offer letter, feel free to contact our office and we can definitely walk you through your offer letter.
Thanks, Mirna. I'll take this next one from Brendan. So, and Mirna, you may want to chime in on this one too. So Brendan asks, how can we avoid drowning in student loan debt if we take any loans out? That is a fantastic question, Brendan. I love it. Surprised only one person's asked so far. But as Mirna and I kind of covered, Mirna more so than me, there's a lot of options to kind of help you with your funding and time with NAU. So if I would say utilize any resources anyone gives you. So Mirna listed a bunch. I will plug a personal one. That private donors scholarship page is fabulous. It's probably my favorite thing. Mirna, did you want to add to that?
Well, and also, that like we mentioned, that we understand loan debt is scary, any type of loan debt, but we can most definitely talk to you about it, walk you through how the loans work, and why it's if you have to take out a loan, how you can take out only we can try to figure out taking out only what you need to cover your essential costs and trying to keep that loan debt, and also focusing on trying to graduate in 4 years, because if you graduate in 4 years, that's one less year that you have to take out student loans. So kind of build your academic program and your discussions with your academic advisor to make sure you're taking the right classes that you need to graduate and taking them in the order that you need to graduate, and also taking the appropriate number that you need to graduate, credit hours that you need to graduate. It's kind of like a holistic process, right? And also, like I said, always will say it. We have our financial aid advisors that are there to demystify loans in general. And there are instances where you have to take out loans. There's no other way around it. But we're there to help you through that process and understand that process.
Thanks, Mirna. I'll grab this next one. So Jennifer asks us, is it possible for parents to log into the student's LOUIE account so that we can make sure everything is taken care of? So this is a bit of a tricky question. In terms of possibility, I won't speak on that because I think that differs per family. But we do recommend that really students are the ones who log into the LOUIE account and communicate with their parents. Since it is the student's education and the student's account, we really champion them being at the helm of this and providing as much information as they can to their support system, especially their parents.
But again, there's the authorized user, right?
There it is. And so with that ties into my next thing. Thank you, Mirna. Lindsay asks us, should a student do both FERPA and the authorized user? So Lindsay, that's a great question. And sorry, a bit of an escapist answer here, but it really depends on the student and their support system. So that's a decision you make as a team, really with the student leading, of course. If the student wants someone looking at their account with them and being able to see their finances, authorized user, definitely want to do that. And if the student wants someone talking and speaking for them, or even asking questions about their account, definitely want to do the FERPA as well. But it's always back on the student and how they want to lead this charge towards getting a degree. Mira, this one's bill for you.
Mhm.
Could you please, Hallie, sorry, I'm just going to
Mhm.
guess here, asks, could you please explain more about the federal work study and how NAU handles that?
Okay, so federal work study, it's it's a loaded question, right?
Yeah, I know.
It's not oh, okay. Basically, federal work study is a method by which institutions or employers get assistance in paying uh, a student wage position. You know, the student will, whether it's a federal work study position or a student wage position, it's a job, and the student will get a paycheck every 2 weeks, like any other job. Or a direct deposit. So, federal work study, we offer a federal work study award, but all positions can be a federal work study position. So, if you have questions, if you were not offered a federal work study award, again, contact our office and we can see whether or not we can put you on a wait list. There is a certain amount that we award for federal work study, but ultimately, a student gets a paycheck every 2 weeks or a direct deposit every 2 weeks. It's just where the money is coming from to pay you. But a student will get paid every 2 weeks.
Thanks, Mirna. Mirna, maybe you should take this one. And
Okay.
Kevin, this is a great question. So just for clarification from Kevin Pleasant, do we
Okay.
need straight A's to submit the FAFSA, or is it okay not to?
Not to submit the FAFSA?
I think not to have straight A's is
And
what we're
not to
getting.
have straight A's, right? No, you do not have to have straight A's to submit the FAFSA. The FAFSA is taking into consideration the family profile, financial profile, in order to award federal financial aid. Okay, so what is federal financial aid? We know for sure it includes student loans, right? The only way a student can be offered a student loan is if they are a student and have completed the FAFSA. And also consideration for need-based grants like the federal Pell Grant, the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, and also any state aid that's tied to the FAFSA calculation. So no, you do not have to have straight A's to submit the FAFSA, and minimally every student should submit and family should submit the FAFSA.
Okay, questions are still open if we have any further.
Mhm.
Just typing response to one of them.
Okay.
And I guess this is a good time to plug this. If you don't get to ask your question today, as Mirna pointed out, our phone lines are a great resource.
Mhm.
Most of the staff, almost, I think would say all the staff can walk you through almost everything we discussed. And if they don't know the answer, they're going to help you find someone who does.
Mhm.
So always remember, if you think of something like late tonight or tomorrow after you're done with us, please call in, please email in. We'll be happy to help you out. Let's see. This is a good one for you, Mirna. Miyakota asks us, when
Okay.
does FAFSA normally release how much aid is available to each student?
Well, minimally, the student will receive a federal student loan, and at the minimum, $5,500 for the year in a federally funded student loan. The other type of aid is need-based aid, and it depends on the FAFSA information. So the Pell Grant is based on the expected family contribution calculation as to whether or not a student is eligible for federal grants, for the federal Pell Grant. And then the state aid that NAU ties to awarding those funds is also tied to the information on the FAFSA. The sooner you complete the FAFSA once it opens, the consideration for those state fundings that are not an a bottomless bucket per se for the state funding, that's where the opportunities are greater at the beginning of the process. However, if a student is eligible for a federal Pell Grant, they will be eligible regardless, as long as they enroll and the aid the Pell Grant disperses. So the Pell Grant is a little bit different than the state aid, but how much at the minimum every student is eligible for $5,500 in a federal student loan.
Thanks, Mirna. Okay. We'll leave the questions open for a few more minutes and just kind of hang out. And like I said, if there's anything that pops up later, please feel free to call in. Please feel free to email in. Our staff will be very happy to help you. Oh, there's a go. I'll take this one, Mirna. So Isabella asks, how do we apply for the Pell Grant? So Isabella, the great thing about the FAFSA, which here it is again, the bare minimum you want to do the FAFSA is because that application works for so much of the aid we discussed. So in order to get student loans, you need to have that FAFSA in. In order to be considered for the Pell Grant, you need to have that FAFSA in. As Mirna mentioned, a couple private donors require the FAFSA. There's really just no losses other than time when you do the FAFSA. And with the FAFSA, when we talk about time, what do you think, Mirna? Like 40 minutes to do a FAFSA in most cases?
It always depends on the time of year, right? Because most people are online, but at this time of the year, usually it can take anywhere between 30 to 35 minutes to complete it. There's a question about the Parent Plus loan.
Do you want to mention the talk that one here now?
Yes. So the award letter, Lorenza, our award letter says I can take a 24K plus loan. Can I accept just some of that? Yes. And it's not you accepting it, and it's not actually accepting it through the system. The Parent Plus loan is the amount that the parent needs can apply for separately through the studentloans.gov website. And yes, you don't have to take all of it. And this is a conversation, a good conversation to have with one of our financial aid advisors, where we can talk about how much loan should you accept, or apply for, how much loan your parents should apply for. And always is just trying to cover the essential costs, the charges that are out there on the student's account, taking care of the tuition and the fees and the dorm, the housing, the meal plan, taking into consideration books. So definitely that is a conversation that you can have with one of our financial aid advisors. But remember, it's not you accepting it on LOUIE. A Parent Plus loan is a separate application process, and it's a process that the parents complete, and the loan is in the parent's name for the benefit of the student.
Mirna, do you want to grab the next one too from Isabella?
Yes. If we have already submitted the FAFSA, how do we access grants and loans? Once you have been admitted and you submitted the FAFSA, we get that information directly sent to us electronically from the federal processor. So we get transmissions twice a week, every week, and we award completed financial aid files, because in some cases, some files are asked to submit additional documentation, and we can definitely have that conversation if you have been selected for the verification process. But once we award or offer an award letter and awards to you, that's where you will see the the loans that you would qualify for, and also what the parents can complete as an offered plus loan. And if you're eligible to receive the Pell Grant, that's where you would see it, the Pell Grant and any state aid.
Mirna, do you want this one, or would you like me to grab this one?
Sure, we can work on it together.
Yeah, well, teamwork it.
Yeah. So Jacob is asking, could you elaborate on everything in the Personal Advantage program? Also, is there a way to directly access scholarships granted through the student, like a certificate? I think I would need some clarification on the last part on the access scholarships granted through the student to answer that one. But the Personal Advantage program, that is a state supported program through all the 3 state institutions. And NAU, of course, is one of them. So basically, it will assist. The Personal Advantage program will assist covering tuition and fees that are not covered by any other resources. So if a student has received a tuition waiver that covers part of their tuition and fees and have no other state, federal or state funding, the Personal Advantage will come in behind that and pay any remaining fees.
And then I'll tag on to this next one. So Jacob,
Okay.
if I'm understanding your question correctly, if you have a merit scholarship, that will be awarded to the student's account, and you should be able to see it
Yes.
on there under financial aid, the tile that, sorry, I'm getting used to the word tile that Mirna pointed out. If you're not sure about that, or you need someone to walk you through, definitely call in the 928-523-4951 number, and we can walk you through that. If you have more questions, we can kind of triage and decide what the best way to address those is.
Yes, those merit scholarships, those high school merit scholarships are awarded at the point of admission. So usually within 2 to 3 weeks from the time that the student has been admitted, you should see a scholarship on there. So if you don't and you think you should, then most definitely you need to contact our office.
All right, well, everyone, thank you so much for attending. Like we've mentioned a few times, submit that FAFSA. But always remember that you can call in and speak with any one of our staff. We're all very happy to help you. We're all very happy to talk to you. You really can't talk to us too much. With that being said, this is Mirna and Fred signing off. Thank you so much and have a great night.
Thank you so much, everyone.